What's up, Diablo 4 players? Big, massive, exciting news today, and that is because there is going to be a new mid-season update that's getting announced in literally 2 days, which is crazy because we just got the Goblin event, and now on Friday, June 14th, we're going to be getting the patch notes for the mid-season update. Now, we don't have an official time when this release, but generally, usually they release on Tuesday, so my assumption is we get the patch notes on the 14th, and maybe on Tuesday, which is the 18th, is going to be the day that we get those. Now, there's another important day. On Friday, June 21st, they're going to be talking about the next season in our Season 5 PTR. So we're getting the announcement of Season 5 and getting to check it out on the PTR probably pretty soon as well. And on top of that, again, this patch is going to be massive. They actually say themselves, this patch is going to include a ton of significant updates to the game related to class, balance, and more, which I'm super excited about. Now, I also want to talk about things that you should do to prepare for this update. And they kind of hint to one thing, and me, myself, as a Diablo partner, I'm not leaking anything, okay? I'm just saying there's this word flurry, and I've been telling them flurry is a super bad skill. It was underperforming on the PTR, and then when they released it, well, it underperformed even more because for whatever reason, they decided to nerf it. I even made in my prediction video, I said the flurry build was a bait. I don't even know why it existed. They added a brand new unique, all of these things for these stun grenades, and it's just not good. And honestly, what it comes down to in terms of like a tier list for like the pit, this is a good actual metric to kind of look at to kind of decide what is going to get buffed, what is going to get nerfed potentially. And while I want to say I cannot guarantee any of these things, I want to prepare you guys. So what I'm trying to say is either pick up these pieces of gear or maybe don't try to build these things within the next couple days because you could be wasting millions and billions of gold to try to get those rerolls, and maybe you're playing this Bash Barb or Heartseeker, and maybe those will get nerfed. Now, again, I'm not confirming it. I'm just giving you guys the best knowledge here of prepping. So let's go ahead and go over it and talk really briefly about each class. What are the best builds? I already know what the best builds are. We can just go to the pit ladder and just click on it and see what people are playing and what has potentials to get buffs and nerfs. So let's start off with the Barbarian. So let's go with the Barbarian. Well, it's pretty much Bash. There's Thorns. There's some Bleed variant. That's kind of like the most popular build, and that's like dominating the leaderboards, okay? So potential for nerf, I would say we're going to start off with the Barbarian. So potentials for nerfs. Now, they already mentioned that Bash was supposed to be additive, and then everyone complained. They're like, oh, okay, just delete the post. So if that does go through, I don't know if that released earlier or what happened, but I did know that that was a post. And you can even find videos of content creators saying, well, Bash is dead, guys, it's gone. And then Blizzard removed that. So maybe they released that too early. I don't know. But what I'm trying to say is that prepare for that. So what could be the next thing for Barbarian? Maybe they're not going to nerf anything. And honestly, I want to say that I'm hoping that they just don't nerf anything and they just buff the stuff that's underperforming. And they said themselves that this is going to be a significant update. So it's going to be a big patch over here. And I'm hoping that it's just like a quick number change for a lot of the stuff that's underperforming versus nerfing everything down. Because the difference between a build that can do, let's say, like a 139 compared to a build that does like 100 is massive. I mean, the amount of HP that the monsters have as you climb up just every 10 tiers is almost like double. So it gets crazy exponentially high when you look at some of the good builds versus like, Dust Devils is a great build for like leveling in the open world, but you compare it to the end game, it's night and day difference. It's like no competition at all. So, this is the season of the Dust Devils, and the Dust Devils aren't really even that powerful. So I would potentially look at things like maybe Whirlwind, or even there is like the Flay build. You can also do like some sort of Rupture. So that may be something where it's really still not performing in terms of the leaderboard. So you could maybe consider that. But also, one of the game philosophies, and this was posted at the Blizzard HQ, which was a little sign that said that like shift the meta was one of their pillars of the game's design. So things that have never been really like top tier, the only skill that like really hasn't shined is upheaval. So if you maybe get a really great Hellhammer, maybe hold on to it. If it's got a greater affix, it's going to be worth a lot more. Or start thinking about maybe invest into just picking one up just in case it's going to be good. Again, that's the point of this video here, is I'm trying to tell you guys what to pick up that has some potential for some massive amount of buffs. Other than upheaval though in the Barbarian, a lot of this stuff has already kind of seen some sort of play, unless we run some sort of like other crazy build with Iron Maelstrom has like no cooldown. That would be kind of cool. But we've already seen like the Charge Barb, we've already seen like there's like the Leap Earthquake, but it's largely I would say unpopular compared, if you compare like the amount of players playing Bash to like Leap Quake, it's not It's not even close. But Thorns, it still is very powerful. It's just not that many people play it compared to, again, Bash Barb. So I would say on the chopping block, if they change Bash, well, you could say that, well, it was originally posted in one of the updates before it got removed. So I would look at upheaval potential for what could be good. Now, as far as the Druid goes, again, let's go ahead and go from left to right. So we already talked about the Barb, so Bash is definitely the most popular. So do not expect buffs to Bash. Expect either nerfs or either no change. Now, as far as the Druid goes, well, it's pretty much just going to be the Tornado and Wind Shear. And the reason why it's basically those is on the Paragon board, there is one specific thing called Thunderstruck that has like no cap on its scale, and that's why this is kind of like the only viable way to make Druid really good. Whereas you take like Earth and Devastation, it has a cap of 40x, and I don't know why it has this. We have the Rogue with the Victimized, it can just scale infinitely. You have the Close Quarters, which can scale infinitely. Why is there a cap on this? It'd be really nice to see no cap on Earth and Devastation, but primarily they did release a new ring, and I don't really see that many landslide builds in terms of like the pit pushing. So if we're comparing, you know, what are the top builds? Well, we don't really see that many people playing Landslide. Pulverize is technically also kind of Earth related too, and even though it's the stuff that you get for free as your season journey for the Iron Wolf's reputation ranks, it is definitely not there. There's like I think there was one player last time I checked this. Let me just jump back. So we have one person playing Pulverize. And again, remember, that's the stuff that they give like the beginner player. It would be nice to see a little bit of a raise over here. There's literally only one person playing it. I don't know why. It's not really that bad of a build. In fact, I'm going to be dropping a really cool build guide where you get infinite ultimate with a Pulverized Druid. But I would say things that are not specifically Storm related definitely deserve some sort of a buff over here. Maybe even running like the Boulder, which is kind of Earth as well. There is also the Hurricane build that probably was never intended to work the way that people are doing, which is snapshotting the overpower, and you basically get infinite overpower with Hurricane, but it's not, I would say, the smoothest process. But the other thing that I think 100% deserves to actually get buffed here, even though it's been buffed I don't know how many times, but Rabies has been super underperforming since the launch of the game. It's just terrible. I don't even know why it has a cooldown. It's like really that bad compared to anything else in the game, and they've really tried to buff it. So maybe this is going to be the season where they're just like, you know what, just buff Rabies to the moon, make it the absolute S tier stuff. So I would look at Rabies gear as well as maybe some sort of like Earth related gear, or even Shred. Shred was one of my favorite builds, and while we look at the list over here, there is I see 0 in terms of Shred. I see 0 over here. So it'd be really cool to see Shred see some play, but don't really expect any buffs with, let's say, like these the Wind Shear Druid. Would really cool to see some sort of like Crone Staff. I mean, Druid has a lot of really cool hybrid uniques, but unfortunately most of them are kind of bad. Like, I'm sure some of you guys have messed around with maybe some of the other things. Where's it? Flesh Render. I was actually trying out this thing because you can get a lot of crazy greater affixes to both of the new rings, actually. Interesting enough, have like this maximum willpower, and you can start stacking crazy amounts of willpower if you were to, like, say, get all of these. You could actually get, I believe, like 70 something extra bonus percent to willpower. The new greater affix everything willpower, and then I was thinking about making a Flesh Renderer build, but it does require the enemies to be poisoned, which is actually another kind of like loop that you got to jump through. If you've played the Druid, you know, if you're not running in Venom, like, your build just doesn't do damage. And I think this is the key thing here to maybe look at, to maybe make it so it's either easier access to make it so you just crit strike damage just is there. You don't have to poison the enemy, because it requires a lot of steps on Druid to really be good. Even the brand new pair of boots over here called Wildheart, you have to like constantly shapeshift, otherwise it only lasts 5 seconds. So a lot of these duration things in general with the Druid, when you're trying to like hybrid out things, it has to require like too long of a duration. Like, these need to be like basically a 0.1 second just after being a werewolf for the next whatever time, because what happens with a lot of like builds is you are activating some sort of skill to convert into another, like, you know, werebear, werewolf, or human, and like during that, like, your armor and all these other things, you have to stay in that form for that 2 seconds, and it allows you to get hit. And because you're not in werebear, werewolf, your bonuses like don't match up, and I think that is a huge problem. So there's a lot of problems, honestly, with Druid. Out of all the classes, I think Druid probably needs the most help. And like, I've leveled every single character this season to 100, and Druid desperately needs help. Another thing that I thought was really interesting is they added this other thing for Lacerate. I forgot which one it was. It was this, where you have like Lacerate does more, it's whenever it crits, your skills deal 4x increased damage for 10 seconds up to 40. The problem is lacerate literally tickles the enemies. This whole thing does like it's ZDPS because you don't have any crazy multipliers off it. So this does ZDPS for that huge duration, and then you technically get to heal. But then like the first crit is guaranteed, but it doesn't matter like in terms of the damage. And then you have this nice 40x, right? That was like maybe the goal of it is like you get this 40x. This should be like a one swipe for like big damage, and it should just one shot, and then you have this bonus. Because again, during this whole duration, you're not doing enough damage to kind of make up for the way the game is designed. And I think that's a huge thing that they should actually change. So I would look at, there's not really like lacerate gear, but it's just like they buff this, and it's still, again, zero people use it at the end game as far as I'm aware of. So pretty much that would be a lot of things to kind of change on the Druid, specifically Rabies and Rabies Shred and some of the Earth stuff is what I would look at to maybe get buffed. So keep that stuff in your inventory over here. Next up though, let's go ahead and hop into the Necromancer. So what's good with the Necromancer now? We all know minions are top tier, and pretty much that's it. Like it's basically minions. There's also like a one Bone Spirit build over here, so that's kind of cool. I actually was still working on my Spirit Bomb and Necromancer, which is supposed to like overpower and one-shot most of the stuff in the game, which is really cool. You might see some sort of like, there's like some Ebon Piercers over here, but for the most part, let's be honest, it's minions. So what could get changed with the Necromancer? So as far as it goes, we don't really use any basic skills with Necro. I don't think there's a basic one. I mean, use Decompose to maybe spawn a corpse or Reap to spawn a corpse, but largely, as far as the basic skills, maybe we can get a basic skill. But we've already seen Bone Spear previously, so I don't know about Bone Spear. It was like the only viable Necromancer build for a long time, but Necromancer doesn't have any like, you know, mastery skills or anything. So looking at like what other skills could be good, because we just have curses here, unless there's a new curse build, which is like a dot build that's that's going to be coming out. I want to say that the blood skills, even Sever, if you look at like the end game, a lot of like the other Necromancer builds are just so bad. I even was mentioning like Blood Surge has had so many like bugs for a long time. The bonuses that you get with Paranormal like does not work. So there's a lot of things that can activate Blood Surge, but they don't work towards the extra bonus for the Overpower, and that's what makes it bad. There's also the Minion build where you get these little Novas. It also doesn't proc towards it. Otherwise you'd have like Overpower, and then maybe you can make the build actually viable. But specifically, I would look at Lance and Blood Surge. These are two things that maybe have a chance to be like Omega Giga buffed, because that's largely what has not really seen any play here. And I again, don't expect any buffs to minions. Maybe they'll just leave it, again, the same. I could see them either leaving the minions the same or maybe a nerf, but definitely no buffs to minions, but buffs to these for sure, because those are, again, underperforming by a long shot. Maybe you can consider Sever. Shadow Blight is... well, I mean, it's still, like, technically there on the leaderboard. It's not, like, completely irrelevant. If you go to Ebon, there's two Ebon Piercer builds, and there's some sort of... people will list, like, Shadow as... they'll just type in... I think they just type in Shadow. You can see... oh, okay, there's Shadow Minions, Shadow Mages, Golem, okay. But... maybe we could see a small buff to that. The Ebon Piercer used to be like one of the most OP things, and then they nerfed it because it had this crazy lucky hit chance and it was awesome. But then they said no. Anyways, next up, because I want to try to get this video out like without taking too much time. But there's just so many things to mention because I want to tell you guys what to kind of look out for as far as gear goes. So Rogue actually has a lot of problems, specifically with melee. If you guys have played Rogue, you probably noticed that like there's no melee builds. Why? Well, to explain it, and I was actually building Twisting Blades, like the OG Poison Twisting Blades that everyone and their grandmother played in Season 0 of the game. So the reason why Twisting Blades was so good with Poison, it was because it was bugged before. In fact, most of the builds in the game are actually bugged. By the way, Heartseeker probably not going to receive any buffs. It's either nothing or major nerfs, and they just basically delete the build out of the game. That's the potential here. And then Rapid Fire becomes the next best build, as I don't really think that they're going to be nerfing Rapid Fire. But the reason why Twisting Blades and the other one are so terrible this season is because you don't have access to getting Umbrus and Dark Shroud, and the reason why is because you need to activate a marksman skill. That's why the only melee rogue is still technically kind of using a marksman skill, right? And you're only really using it for the lucky hit to activate your other skills, because the lucky hit chance, well, 33-10 compared to having 35 times 3, well, it is a massive difference, right? So that is like one starter reason. And then on top of that, you have to be up close, and well, simply people don't like to get frozen 24/7. And Rogue is a little bit more squishy as a class unless you get lots of dodge. And as you start scaling a lot more dexterity, you don't really get the equal amount that you would get with just say like some other node that just gives you fortification, like you would have on like the Barb or in the Druid, which can actually make the build feel a lot more tanky because they also buffed fortification recently. So the reason why is it just simply doesn't do enough damage. There is not some sort of crazy multiplier that you get with Twisting Blades, even though you can run something like Close Quarters. While I was testing out last night, even if you have like this up to like 60x damage, which is about average, you could definitely push towards 100. That's like min-max, like top 1% player base will get that kind of stuff in terms of like perfect masterworking and all that stuff. But it still feels like it's a lot more squishy because how you actually gain a lot of survivability is with all of these lucky hit chances to freeze and stuff. And it would be really nice to get some more damage because while we do happen to have the largest like scaling multiplier of Frigid Finesse, if the thing is not crowd controlled or able to be frozen, it just makes the bosses so much more difficult with this. And because the pit's boss's HP is scaled so high, even if you have some sort of poison imbue, and it doesn't seem to be as powerful as it used to because monsters just have way more HP, and we need these crazy multipliers like on Victimize to get like, you know, like X 1400x damage, right, in order to get really good damage, or you need billions of damage with the Andariel's build. So I would say the things that have some potential to get buff are specifically Twisting Blades, and they even hinted towards Flurry, and I've been telling them as a Diablo partner, buff Flurry. This thing, I don't even know why they decided to nerf it. Like, no joke, they actually nerfed it when my suggestion was they needed to buff it. I don't know why. Maybe there was some sort of interesting interaction with Lucky Hit and some sort of bug and it was causing something. But I have no idea why Flurry got nerfed. It was already super behind everything, basically. It doesn't do enough damage, that's the problem. But then if you're relying on the brand new ring, and they released this new ring, and have you guys even seen one person run a Flurry? I know it says 0 damage, but it technically does some damage. Now the problem is also, and I've mentioned this, is that the damage that this deals, and this is the brand new unique, right? They decided to nerf the lucky hit chance, but this does not do enough damage. This needs to increase its damage by a long shot. The aspect that's old actually does more damage than the brand new unique ring, which is supposed to make the build good, which I don't know. It's a best with Flurry. Basically, just make this, scale this just to the moon in terms of damage, and then maybe we have a build. Now, I always wanted to see a Shadow Step build because there was one like aspect that lets you continuously Shadow Step and just teleport, and it would ramp up in damage. But it was never a build. The only way you can play it is like in World Tier 1, you can one-shot stuff, and it feels good. But it's World Tier 1, so it doesn't really matter too much. You could probably run it in World Tier 4, technically, on open world content. But then you come up to an Elite, and then, well, if it doesn't one-shot, well, you're on a long cooldown. So I'd love to see a Shadow Step build, or you know what I think that really needs to receive a buff out of everything is some sort of cool Shadow Clone build. I mean, these are some of the coolest things in the entire game to make like a clone build. Like you have this like trickster archetype where you're summoning all these clones that can do damage too. I think that is a really cool class fantasy that has never really existed in the game. So it'd be really cool to see some sort of Shadow Clone build. That's what I want to see. That one might take a little bit longer, but I'm saying I have like, if I was to bet on what skill is going to get buffed out of every single thing, absolutely Flurry. And the reason why was because, well, it just simply hasn't really ever been a like meta skill, and everything else kind of sees somewhat of play. Maybe Pen Shot could see a buff too, but that's what I would look at. Maybe some of these other basic skills, because no one has really used Forceful Arrow or these other ones for the most part as like a main source of damage dealer, but I don't know if they'll do that. I think it's going to be Flurry. Anyways, so next class over here. So as far as the Sorceress goes, I should just mention, it's basically just Heartseeker. There is a couple Rapid Fire sprinkled in. I don't expect Rapid Fire to get nerfed. It's just Heartseeker, if anything. But don't expect any buffs from that. But buffs on Flurry, I almost want to say guaranteed. Anyways, let's move on with the Sorcerer. So what is good with the Sorcerers? Well, I can see the Immortal Firebolt build getting nerfed for the Immortality. They actually tried to nerf the Immortality beforehand, and it was not able to actually nerf it, because if you start Masterwork and get all of your stuff absolutely perfect, you can still become Immortal. And while I want to say that is kind of cool, that's probably a bad game design, and the reason why is if they release content in the future and you have like an Immortal build, well, it just trivializes all the content. So immortal builds in general probably shouldn't exist. So I would say they're probably going to nerf the Immortality on it. So either sell your gear now or whatever. But that is like the top tier build. But a lot of people don't really like that build, and it's not very casual friendly because you need so much of an investment. I would say Frozen Orb is probably that other top tier build, but it doesn't really deserve a nerf. So I would say the Firebolt, Firewall build won't receive nerfs in terms of my personal opinion on the damage, but it would receive a nerf in the immortality department. So what could be changed with the Sorceress? Well, they did a really strange buff where they buffed the charged bolts recently, and I have not even seen one person talk about or play it. Maybe it is secretly hidden meta, and we just got to build it. But I was actually messing around with the teleport build, and while that's great at clearing out like open world content, it is hard to push pit with a teleport build. Like what you can do and what I was doing before, I was like, okay, man, I want to get this Oculus up, try to hit a couple on this, and then we get, you run the Harlequin, and we just get ranks to teleport. I don't know if it's on pants, but like you can get crazy amounts of teleport. You can get like 40, 50 ranks of teleport, which sounds insane, right? And then there's like this thing where it says, oh, teleport does 500x damage. Oh, well, it must be the best skill in the game. 500x is like unheard of amounts of damage. It requires a hefty amount of investment, and even then, the problem is that a lot of your aspects are going to be tailored towards running and holding down Arc Lash while also teleporting and running this thing on the amulet with teleport, having the extreme amount of cooldown. Then you got to get CDR everywhere, and you got to get Masterwork. It's a hefty investment, but I think that'd be really cool if they decided to buff that. But my expectations are maybe Incinerate or Fireball, some sort of fire variant and lightning variant, because Frozen Orb and Blizzard are the current ones that are seeing some play, as well as the Fireball, Firebolt. So I don't expect those to be incredibly powerful. And while I want to say it'd be cool to see Ball Lightning make a return, as Ball Lightning was one of my favorite builds in Season 2. I'm sure you and your grandma played it because everyone played Ball Lightning Sorcerers because it was one of the most OP bugged builds in the entire game. And, well, it was really fun, but now it's just not there, man. There's a lot of things that got nerfed on it, and specifically is how much it attacks. So while I don't think it's going to get any sort of crazy buffs to where it originally was, maybe that could be something that could get changed, but it was already powerful, and they want to actually shift up the meta. That is kind of like their game design philosophy. So I would say be on the lookout for maybe some fire stuff or lightning stuff. Chain Lightning has never been really like an OP build. It's great for leveling though because it's just fast, but Charge Bolt has never really seen high tier play. Also, another thing that I mentioned like a long time ago, like this thing has always been bad. I really wish this thing was good with Lightning Nova, but even if you stack a crazy amount, yeah, don't expect to like be one-shotting things with it. Unfortunately, you still have to activate Crackling Energy, and then you have to pick it up, then there's a chance. And it used to be a 10%, now it's 15. Even if this was 100%, I don't know if it would actually be that insane. It would still require a hefty amount of investment, but it'd be kind of cool to see Essadors make some sort of return. So as far as Sorcerers goes, yeah, expect to lose out on Immortality. Expect that as far as a nerf, that's the only thing I would assume getting nerfed. And then again, Fire Lightning would maybe see some play. There's like one Meteor build here, so I don't think that will get nerfed, but maybe they can receive some buffs from Meteor. But it was technically popular, I think, was it Season 3 is when Meteor came out. The Starfall Corona, that was like the new unique. That was kind of cool. It's not this one. It's this one. Where is it? There we go. That one for Meteor. It would be cool to see some sort of other Meteor build, or maybe you can convert Meteor to something else. I just like seeing brand new uniques. Anyways, that's going to wrap things up. That's, my take on what I would suggest for you guys to maybe, if you guys pick up these pieces of gear, normally if something rolls with, let's say, like Meteor, or let's say some other skill that is, like, super underperforming, let's say, like, ranks to Upheaval, Greater Affix, you delete it, but save those items because some of the stuff that is underperforming, and specifically looking at some of these right here, so like the C tier and below, Blood Surge, Sever, everything that I've already mentioned, those have a lot more chances to get buffed, and especially Flurry. Like, this thing desperately needs some help. But anyways, those are my suggestions for gear to pick up so you guys can get ahead of the game with this new update that we're getting an announcement in 2 days. And once the class, update comes out, I'll let you guys know, but it's always good to be ahead of the game. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like. If you're new here, subscribe to the bell so you don't miss out when we cover the brand new patch when it comes out and Season 5 very, very soon. Take care. See you guys on the next one.